Welcome to If These Pages Could Talk. Today we are talking about some library magic, working as a full-time writer, and controlled burns. I am your host, Kiersten Marcil, author and adventure into history. I'm here with my co-host,
Sevannah Storm, romance author.
And today we are introducing you to Cid. Cid, tell us about yourself.
Hey, so I am also a romance author, newly signed to Champagne Books. I'm writing contemporary romance, and we'll talk all about that. Let's see, I'm a former teacher. Currently, I'm a technical writer and instructional designer at a medical school. And I've had a very twisty, turny career, which kind of all came together several years ago. Let's see, I live in an old house in New Hampshire with my husband and a dog and a cat. I have 2 grown daughters and a grandbaby. So yeah, life is good.
That's fantastic. I know that people are going to really love to hear about, as you said, your twisty turny and all the cool things that you do. So I love the fact that we're going to talk a little bit about your after school book club for kids. So that inspired our show and tell today, which is to show one of our favorite books growing up. So who wants to go first?
Oh my gosh. I'm happy to. I have to tell you, because I'm so excited. I ran off to the library to pick up my copy because I couldn't find mine. When you gave this prompt, I was like, oh, what do I do with this? Because like 3,000 books came to mind, and asked me on a Tuesday, the answer will be different. So how do I pick them? So I'm sorry, I picked 2. So one that I remember as a read aloud from when I was really little was Blueberries for Sal. I was born in Maine, and this takes place in Maine. And I just love the fact that the mom in this book just kind of let Sal go off and pick blueberries. And I always loved when we were reading this aloud when my mom and I were reading this aloud, that it makes a sound of the blueberry going in the bucket, kerplink, kerplink, kerplunk. So I always love that. And I don't know if you can see behind me over my shoulder, there's a picture on the wall, which is actually all the text, all the words from this book. And then with the whiteout, it's kind of like a reverse picture of this illustration.
Yes.
My daughter gave that to me a few years ago, and it's hanging in my office. So that, and then I think this was actually read aloud that I had a kindergarten teacher read this to me in kindergarten.
Wow.
Obviously, like, yeah, I know 80% of it went over my head. But so I reread it again, probably like 3rd grade or so. And this, it's a miracle that I don't write fantasy, because this was such a pivotal book. And really all through middle school and high school, that's basically all I read was speculative fiction, sci-fi, fantasy. Then stopped reading it for years, and in recent years I picked it back up again. But this clearly, this just was one of those books, I think, for a lot of us, that Wrinkle in Time, were just these kind of very anchoring books, for me anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that was going to be my other choice too, except I was going through my collection and the Sons had accidentally ripped off the cover of I had like one of the old ones that are hard to find. Yes. So my husband replaced it for me, which was nice, but very expensive to get that set. But Useful Son had actually taken the good set of me. So I brought this one. It's not actually my favorite, but it's a choose your own adventure, and I loved these. I had a zillion of these growing up. I just thought these so much fun. They're so fabulous. And when I was an educator for years, these need to come back because they were so engrossing. Yeah, my favorite one was actually with a unicorn and had magic involved, but I loaned it to a friend and never got it back. Which is why I am so possessive about my copies. I don't share copies anymore.
Oh, I get that. Yeah. Very cool. Yep.
Okay.
Deb, what you got?
Mine is, I have no idea what it's called, who wrote it. It's about 9 brothers, identical brothers, and they each have a special skill, like a talent, or one can resist fire, one can resist ice, and one can hold his breath for hours, and all of this. And one brother fell in love with a princess and wanted to marry her. So the king devised a series of tests. And because of his brothers, he got the princess in the end. And I cannot remember. So if readers, viewers, anybody, if you can, and it was 9 Chinese brothers. That's what I remember. But when I was younger, well, a little bit older, I got into my grandmother's Mills and Boons bookshelf, and she had one of these. It's not Mills and Boons, I don't know what it is, but I brought it. It's called Lady Love. It's about a woman who's filthy rich, but her father says she can't make it in the real world. So she goes out and gets a job as a research assistant to a romance author who has a stuck in the mud son, right? And he hates her on site. And they have a party, and of course she's all blinged out because she's got all the stuff and access and best party ever. And he corners her in the closet. And every time I read that scene, I giggle myself silly. So yes, Lady Love by Diana Palmer.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that's very prescient that you read that young.
I did, yeah, my grandmother's books. Yeah, so this is, check how old it is. It's ancient.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
It looks like a good afternoon or maybe end of the day read. You just kind of tuck yourself in because it doesn't look like it's a huge commitment, but it looks super fun.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to have something quick and easy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, actually, Cid, before we move on, I do want to ask you, did you see the film version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe
Yeah, I did. I took my kids to it, and we all read it, of course. I actually really did like it. I often don't like film adaptations. But there was something very magical about it. I thought they did it really well. The soundtrack was amazing. So no, I really did like it. Yeah.
Okay. I was curious because one of the fascinating things about that film was the director said they didn't go back and reread it. To write the script, they based it solely on what stuck out in their mind over the years. So it's right. So I thought that was really amazing. Really amazing. So
yeah. Oh man, I think I would have thought that they would have gone through tooth and nail, whatever, through the words. But wow.
Yeah, no, isn't that interesting? Yeah, and I think my favorite part of that film too is when Peter and Susan are looking across Narnia, the vast distance. They're trying to go get Edmund, and Mrs. Beaver says, "It's the world, dear. Did you think it was small?"
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was so breathtaking. Breathtaking in that film.
Well, also the other thing about that film, and I think what's so appealing to young kids especially too, is that Lucy, I mean, she has such agency, and she's so wise beyond her years, and I think that was very true in the film. I was happy, it wasn't just that all of them worked together. They did, but Lucy came out really front and center in that, and I really loved that this young girl was such a powerful character.
Yes, because that actress was so young. So young. Yeah, and they put her on the set the first time she went to Narnia, and she hadn't seen it, so that was as natural reaction as you could get. They had to stop filming a couple times because she had growing pains through her legs. Like, she was the real deal.
Oh, wow. I love that. Yeah, that's so great. Yeah.
I promised you side tangents. There we go.
Oh, no, I'm the queen of side tangents. So yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, I know people are going to be interested in you being a full-time author. So, was that a childhood dream for you?
Well, let me correct that a little bit. I write full-time because I do writing in different areas. I think you had another guest on, Kelly, just a couple weeks ago, who's a technical writer as well as being an author. So I'm sort of in a similar boat. Because I was a former teacher and I had worked in the human service field, and because I'm a pretty strong writer just academically, I have morphed into a job where I do produce online content. So I write content a lot of educational material. I written academic articles, but my main focus now is writing educational content. Basically courses that are designed to improve quality of care for individuals with developmental disabilities. So I do a lot of writing on that. I write lots of text. And then I've been writing for children for years. That's really how I got into creative writing, was through children's stuff. And then this writing. And, a few years ago, rather than look for another job, I decided, and this is so, it's an incredibly kind of privileged position to be in, but I did decide, my husband and I decided that I was just going to devote myself to writing and really taking writing seriously, like saying, this isn't a hobby anymore, that, I'm taking classes and I'm investing my time and my effort and really learning and taking this on. Especially when I started writing the romance and making that commitment. And I mean, it's kind of paid off. So that's very cool. And, I'm not a spring chicken here. So it's kind
None of us
cool
are.
to be starting. It's almost like having a new career again, investing in a new career. And that's so exciting. Yeah. So just, I do a lot of writing, but I do more than just sit at my desk all day writing on my novels. I do it at work. So yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Is there like, what's something that you learned through your writing courses that have really jumped out and helped you?
Early on, and again, because a lot of the writing courses that I did, they did focus on children's literature, but so much translated, people keep saying, oh, but you're doing a completely different kind of writing now. But whether it's children's writing or adult fiction or even writing like a journal article, it's trying to find a thread in finding a story, a compelling story, and developing that line of reasoning, like finding your problem and solving it. And I think a lot of the writing courses, again, focused on children's, and in some ways writing children's picture book, they're little like microcosms. I mean, in 500 words, you're developing a character, you're developing a setting, you have to create a complete arc. It's almost like writing poetry in a way. It's a similar kind of thing where it's almost like a snapshot. And I think that all of that very focused attention on character building and wordsmithing carries over into everything. And yeah, so I think that is one of the big takeaways. And I think just in terms of, in general, what I've learned about writing over the years, and again, it still translates, is that it's not a solitary thing. A lot of times I think you have this image of like Emily Dickinson sitting in her, in her room. I lived in Amherst, Massachusetts for a while and walked by her house and, walked by the room where she sat and wrote poetry. It is not a solitary endeavor. I mean, you need your writing partners, your critique partners. I have been with the children's literature critique group for over 8 years. I have joined through RWA, the New Hampshire chapter. I go there. So you need that support, and you need to learn, and you need to go to workshops. And since working with Champaign, working with my editor, and it's a give and take. And when I got a revise and submit originally from Cassie, and she had such insightful comments, and you have to sit with that and think and work with what feedback you're getting, and just learn from that and really be willing to pull apart your work. And I think that that's something that a lot of people who don't write, or when they're first starting out, they don't realize how collaborative a process it really is. And it's none of it's completely yours because of that, I think. But that's kind of a cool thing. It keeps you sort of humble with your work.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so much I want to build on that. So that was great. So one question that came to mind while you were talking is, I think there's this idea out there, I've definitely seen it floating around from people who don't write younger children's books, that they're easier Or I've had people who don't write say to me, they're easier. You should write a children's book.
No, no. You know, it's so interesting that you say that. I think early on, you know, I thought, oh, well, yeah, this is cool. You know, I had babies at the time and I'm thinking, oh, these are short books. I can do that. Oh my gosh, no. I mean, I have been writing for years and years. I finally, we can talk about it. I finally got a children's story published in a magazine. I have endless manuscripts. They are so focused and it's so difficult. And the thing, and I have to say, writing a novel, no matter what genre, is difficult. You need perseverance. And I'm not saying one's easy, one's difficult. What I found with writing romance and writing a novel was, it was freeing in a way. It wasn't difficult or harder. It was freeing. When you're writing, especially with picture books, you know that an illustrator is going to be picking up your words. I tend to be very lyrical. Can you tell I like to talk? Sorry, I have another call. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm very wordy and I'm very lyrical. And so I have found picture books constraining. And in some ways, I know one of the questions you asked, you'd sent a list of questions, which was so helpful, is, you know, where would you like to go, you know, in the future with your writing? And along the children's line, I would now really like to try to write middle grade or even YA, because I love the ability to use words. I can use my own words to paint the pictures, you know? So, yeah, it's one, yes, children's is difficult, but I would not say, I mean, there are other difficulties in writing a novel, clearly. I mean, I don't have to tell you that. So, you've both done it.
Both. And so has lots. All right. I was gonna maybe wait until we interview you, Sev, but now I got to point out that gorgeous wall behind you. It looks fantastic.
I know.
Look at all those books, and that's
That
not
was
all
the
of them
first
either.
thing,
Like,
I know. When you first signed on and I was looking, I'm like, wow, that's really impressive.
Thank you.
Beautiful covers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cid, did you find in writing your novel that you were an overwriter?
No, not at all. If anything, was an underwriter. I had to kind of beef it up. That being said, I did do a lot of very long lyrical passages that my editor told me to take out. I mean, I had like endless descriptions of the beautiful riverbank with all like the detailed flowers and every sound, you know, I was writing with all the 5 senses and everything. And at some point, Janelle Mitty is my editor, and she said, lose it, you know, you asked a question about food. I had, you know, 3 pages of how my main character made lasagna. You know, talking about it in a couple sentences, you don't need, she sautés the beef and that's the ricotta, you know, you just don't need that. So there were sections where I clearly went so overboard. And in some cases, some of the leaps, I made leaps that were too big and I had to go back and kind of flesh them out. Yeah.
So what came first for you then? Was it, well, first of all, do you write from start to finish, or did you write scenes and put it together?
So that's such a great question. What I did with this, with Controlled Burn, is the novel that I have coming out with Champagne. And I had almost given up on writing a romance novel. My daughter actually recommended that I try writing one, and I researched the genre incredibly. I just read across all the subgenres. I actually did academic research, market research. I mean, I kind of did my own like romance writing university myself. And then before I started tackling it, and I was so determined to write a romance novel, I started one novel, got very far down the path when someone pointed out that this is women's fiction, it's not romance. So I said, oh, okay, goodbye, we're doing romance. And I'd almost given up on it. And I had read literally the night before, the day I'll tell you about, I had read this novel, and it was not very good. And I don't remember what it was about or anything, but it did feature this brawny male firefighter going into rescuing the poor innocent. And I thought, that's great. Some are wonderful, but I had read just one too many. And I went on a hike with my daughter the next day. We climbed a mountain, and at the top of this mountain was a fire tower. And there I am, me and my daughter, feeling, I am woman, hear me roar. And I'm like, oh, could you imagine what happens on a fire tower? And could you imagine if it's a fire chief and she's a she? Bing, that was it. And so now I actually didn't, there was this, I didn't really know, that's all I knew, Yeah. And I knew that in writing romance, most of the romance I had read, you also asked about the heat level. This is like a jalapeno or a serrano. So I knew I had to write that scene, which was killed me. I mean, that was like so hard for me to do. It's so outside my comfort zone. I mean, like I write about little kids, like, oh, I'm going to write that. So I wrote that scene first just to see if I could do it. And I sat in my office. No one was home. It was like, everyone leave. And I sat down and just wrote and wrote and wrote and kind of went, oh, whoa, that's done. And I vaguely knew a premise that they would have had a fight the night before. So it was unexpected that this would have happened or something. And I didn't even know the whole premise. All I knew was that it happened. And I started writing on either side of that. What happened? What led up to this event? What came after this event? And so the characters, they didn't have names, started getting fleshed out. But that gave me an anchor point. And from there, once I got I'd say 2 or 3 chapters on either side, I kept writing backwards and forwards, which is a bizarre way to write. I then could go all the way back to the beginning, and I outlined, and I created probably a 15-page outline, which is great because I shortened it into my synopsis. It made it really helpful. And then it became like a job. I'd get up in the morning and I'd put my finger on the part of the outline where I knew I was oh, I'm at chapter 11. This happened last, pick it up and just start writing. And from there, it just went like that. And of course, I changed it all completely from there. That chapter had been like chapter 12, and it's now, I don't know, like 20 or something. So it went through millions of iterations and millions of revisions. But so that was an interesting way to write. My current work in progress, which I'm hoping will be book 2, if my editor likes it, is in the series. And I start at the beginning, and I have an outline and I'm going from beginning to end. So anyway, that's a very long-winded answer, but that first one, it just, because of what it was, I needed to do it that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I like
Excellent
that you
answer.
gave a full answer. Yes, it was. Why don't you tell us then about controlled burn?
Okay, so I'm gonna just make sure I took notes so that I could actually make it so you really knew what it is. So it is a small town contemporary romance, and usually when you think small town, you do think that Hallmark, sweet, cozy, and it's a great town. I would love to live there. And it's set in northern New Hampshire. I created this little town in a state park. There is a lake that does not exist in my book. It is there. So it's a really cozy little town, and it does feature a strong woman. I mean, she is the fire chief, and I tell it all from her perspective. I personally like books that are told from one perspective, but I also really want to only tell the women's side of things. She's a strong woman, and I want that to be featured. And in fact, book 2, again, it is told from the woman's perspective. And I think if this does become a series, that will be my MO on that. It will be all from the women's perspective. So she is a fire chief. She's been hired into this park in New Hampshire. And I don't want to give much away, but she's struggling with what it means to be a strong firefighter, and true to her profession, and wondering if she can work love into her life. And one of my bylines is, she fights a relationship, she fights love as hard as she fights a fire. So
That's great.
yeah. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's more action. I would say that there's more action in this. Action really carries this. It's a more plot-driven novel. The second book, I really wanted to kind of stretch myself. It's way more emotionally driven. But I think for my first, it was just easier to, one, do realistic fiction. I would love to write fantasy. I mean, I look at what you guys do. That's next. That's in my future. But to start realistic fiction, to write about a place I knew. This is my home. You know, I've driven there. The fire tower is a real place. You know, I've been to this fire tower. Yeah, it was just easy for me to start there.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to have, even if they're not like, even if you're not writing a specific place, just to have different places in mind, places you've gone, or you know, different things you've inspired from.
Right. Yeah.
How many revisions did you do from the first time you kind of wrote the end and then where we are now?
Several. And in a couple cases, true revisioning. In one case, like the plot almost didn't change. And the characters didn't change. But what was interesting is in the revise and resubmit, Cassie just asked a couple of questions and she wanted me to do a couple of things. And that forced me to do a deep dive into the language. And what I realized is I don't love this character. And it occurred to me, why would anyone else like this character? And she was very flat and she had a very weak character arc. And in tightening the language, I completely changed the character arc. The original premise, I realized, was completely weak and convoluted. And so even though the plot stayed the same, her arc got fleshed out. And that was a pretty major revision. I did a lot of revising on that. I mean, and the other thing is, originally I had written the draft and realized that the plot needed a foil. There was a hole in it. And what's interesting about that is I really didn't know where to go with it. And I was reading the newspaper, and unfortunately I can't tell you the event, but I was reading the local newspaper and a major event happened 2 towns over. And then 2 towns south, a major like crime. And it was like, oh my goodness, I've got it. And so there is a major event, a little foil that happens, which is really like the first third of the book. And it sets up for the second half of it, really, that is based on an actual event that happened just 2 towns over from me. So yeah, so those were the 2 major revisions. And then, you know, every time I took a pass, every time Janelle even wanted just wording changes, I would find holes that I needed to fill, you know, or she would ask a question and I needed to work with that. Or, I mean, even like people that I had read it, one of my daughters read it, both my daughters read it, and they both had incredible comments. You know, people say, oh, family, they're just going to tell you that it's good. Oh no, my kids, they're both really good writers. They're both really strong readers, and they are both not at all bashful about critiquing. And they gave incredible feedback early on. And that really, I had to really go back and rethink a few things. So, yeah.
Oh, that's really helpful.
So
Yeah.
jelly.
Yeah.
Seriously, jelly.
Yeah. My husband refuses to read my book.
I read my husband. I make him sit down and I read him chapter by chapter. He's also a copy. He's a good copy editor, so he does a lot of that for me. But
that helps.
so sorry. Yeah, but so he's never read your book?
No, but I have to give him credit because this past weekend, when, you know, where we are filming now, I was just at Authors Congress, which is this
Oh,
program that I do, and one of my authors, every flight of his got canceled. He never got off the West Coast, and he was the only other speaker on my panel on historical fiction. And so I'm in the hotel room the night before trying to figure out what to do. It's like 10:30 at night. My husband goes, "I'll moderate for you so you can do the panel."
oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
so I don't know if I posted them yet. I will, some nice pictures of the husband with me. Cid was telling us about whether she had sent her drafts through with a writing group. And so maybe I'll just sort of jump to in our next question, which was going to be, you kind of alluded to, when did you join the writing group? Was it while you're writing, afterwards?
So with children's, I started kind of right off when I decided I would try to write children's. I joined SCBWI, which Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, I guess, both at the national and the local level, and found a critique group right away. And I've been with those folks, as I said, for I think over 8 years now. With romance, I joined. Went to meetings, which was mostly like a learning experience. I went and I listened, and they sponsored talks and workshops and stuff. And then wasn't a member for a while, and then just recently picked it back up again. And I have read a little snippet to them. They invite you to share things. They do have the option of critiquing. So I mean, I don't think the whole book, I've got to figure out exactly what they do with the critiquing, but I'll probably make use of that too, having them read, or if I get stuck on something. I know when I sat in on a critique meeting where someone was having trouble with a chapter, and they brought the chapter and we read it, and we kind of discussed directions they could go in. So that's a helpful thing. I mean, I think that's what we were talking about in the beginning, that it is a collaborative process, and sometimes you just need that extra set of eyes and that extra opinion to keep you going. So yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. With your second book that you're working on, are you done with the draft?
No, I'm about halfway through. And you're talking about revision. I actually have made major revisions. Like I thought I'd be done with this, I don't know, over the winter. And I realized that the first plot that I had was so convoluted. It just did not make sense. And I was trying to make it another action book, and it starts off as a very action-oriented book, and it morphs into a more emotional book, and I had to really retool several times before I got it right, before I really understood my characters and understood where I was going and how she fit into the town. As she's a pilot, she starts off as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and she morphs into she becomes a tour guide. I myself, several years ago, learned to fly a little plane. So I never got my pilot's license, but I took lessons mostly to get myself over my fear of flying. But I did it for, I don't know, a year or so, and learned how to fly a plane. So I had to write a book about a woman pilot. So so that's what this one is.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but she's totally, it's so interesting when, and I'm sure you've had this experience, and a non-writer sometimes looks at you like you're crazy when you say, my character told me. I used to say to people, yes, I had, I sat on the sofa and my character said to me X, Y, and Z. And it's like, they tell you. And she kept saying to me, this is not me. And I had to finally listen and say, okay, who are you? What do you really want? And it kind of gelled very recently, and it allowed me to put together an outline. And now, if I weren't like fighting with my website, I'd be writing. So anyway, yeah.
That's so funny. There's this cute little movie out there called Not Another Love Story, and it's these writer small publishing house team, and that is one of the plots, is that her main character like actually just manifests itself and starts talking to her, and she's like, when are you gonna write my ending? That's not me. That's not my thing.
Well, it's true. Like they do. They sit there and they're like, "Come on!" I remember there was one in the in the first book, and I forget why I couldn't write. I had to stop writing for a while, and I left one of my characters in a very precarious position, and I just kept thinking, like, "Oh no, I have to get back and rescue you." And I really had this feeling, like, "Oh, poor guy." So yeah.
Oh my God. I keep telling people the end of my first book, do not blame me because my character took over and totally took
Yeah.
it somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. But she was right in the end.
I mean, that's what's so exciting when you know your character that well and that character is so in your mind that, I mean, clearly it's you. But it's so interesting how your mind just kind of can go off, whatever little subconscious message happens, that your character is giving you. But that's the exciting thing. Like that's a creative element of this whole thing, just that these ideas just kind of pop up. Like if someone said, "Where do you get your ideas?" It's like, I don't know. They're there. They flow through. It's like a river just kind of flowing out there. So yeah.
And now, forgive me because I've totally lost track if we were talking about this on recording or in our break about just improv theater and it really is
Right.
that theater aspect of writers of theater. But yeah.
We were talking about that. Yeah. So yep.
Sev, I have to ask because you've written more than we have. Do you still have that where your characters are in your head and take you to places you weren't expecting?
That's why I'm looking at you two like you're insane.
Oh no. Oh.
No, they
So
do not
for
talk
you,
to me.
is it more like, does it become a point, like when I was writing Controlled Burn, once I got that outline, it really was like a job. I could have been writing, about, I don't know, anything, like how to plant a plant. Like I knew the steps that I needed to take, and I was secure in my characters and everything. And it was just almost like, I don't want to say like a machine. It was still creative, but I just kind of went, like, when you write as much as you have, like, does it get to be that kind of process for you?
It does, but you still have the compulsion to finish. You still want to finish
Yeah.
the novel, you still want to finish telling your story, but
Yeah.
I can't emotionally become over invested in every character. I know people who have this, my character had a childhood trauma, and this is how they reacted to it, and their favorite food and color and song. I don't have that. If it's pertinent to the story, then they have a favorite color. But if it's not,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it becomes a I'm currently trying to write Lust Forged. You see? Lust Forged. Right?
Yep.
And I had to just step aside because I just wasn't feeling it. And I know the story. I know where it's going. I know the plot points, everything. But if I'm not passionate about it, it doesn't end well. So it's the same when I do a painting or a sketch. If I'm not committed, it comes out looking like shit. So I just stepped back, and now I'm editing the Shikari, which is somewhere over there.
Wow. I know. I was looking at that wall. It's like that one. That one. That's impressive. Yeah. So there's an emotional investment in the piece itself, but not necessarily in your, I don't want to say, I mean, clearly you have an emotional investment in the characters, but
Yeah, but
it's not that be all and end all. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if someone said to me, I don't like a personality, then I'm sorry, don't read my book. Because each person has their own quirkiness, their own character. But what I'm trying to also learn is to add the tweaks. I listened to a podcast and they said, give your character stamp collecting. And you think to yourself, it's an assassin who collects stamps. And you think that is lovely. So
That really is.
yeah, so it's like little tweaks like that. That's what That's what you have to remember to add. I mean, you could add that you
Yeah.
can mention their favorite color and their favorite food, and it means nothing. But as soon as you say this assassin collects stamps, it's like, wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just
Adding those little distances.
yeah, but smart. Work smart, not hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Work smart, not hard. That's great. Yep. Yeah, that's good.
Fascinating to me because we all write so differently. Like Sid, you obviously plotted everything out ahead of time based on the scene
Her
that you
market
started.
research.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, like,
yeah.
that definitely came later for me.
What marketing?
This is a business.
Well, I was not going to invest in a genre that, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a genre that doesn't really do well. I don't know. I don't want to throw anything under the bus, but like some outdated genre. I didn't want to like invest in some genre that was no one was ever going to read. Romance, let's face it, is a massive. I mean, last I checked, it was something like 40% of the market. Is it something like that? It's
I don't
huge.
know the percent. I just know it's billions.
Yeah, it's the number one
It's
seller. I mean, it's $1 billion business. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And there's a reason for it, and it's so cool to see, you know, so much good press being given to it. I think a lot of people, what I was hearing and what I'm seeing in the press is that a lot of people turn to it during the pandemic. It's comforting, you know,
Yeah.
in a romance, you know it's going to have a happy ending. It might not be happy getting there, but when you close the book and put it back on the shelf, you can go, you know, you can breathe. It's very satisfying. And during those days, like it was like cozy, you know, it was comforting. And I think a lot of people discovered it. And I mean, the genre, I think what I learned about romance that really surprised me, I didn't realize this, is just the number of subgenres. If you read a fantasy romance, it is not a Western romance. It is not a historic romance. And then, you know, all of these multi subgenres coming in and out, like throw YA into it, throw rom-com into it. And it can be so fascinating how these subgenres twist and turn. So you could just never, you can read Ali Hazelwood one day and, you know, Savannah Storm or Kiersten Marcil the next, and all three are going to be completely different, you know?
Yeah.
With happily ever afters.
Exactly. That's the whole thing, you know? Yeah. When I was sitting there all alone in isolation, I didn't want to read like a book that ended in some calamity or that left you just like, what's happening now? Like, did that happen or did it not happen? Or why are you making me think about this? You know, I wanted to close the book and just go, oh, okay, it's done. I know. And it's happy.
Yeah. I think romance is like the kind of like the reverse of every other genre, because so many other books, other genres have a love story in them, but romance, it's a little more front and center, and like you said, it has that happy ever after, happily for now. So
yeah, which is why it's fun to write too. I mean, when you
Mm.
start writing, you know, from the first, when you pick up a romance novel, you know, by the end of the first chapter, the ending. You don't know how they get there. You don't really know the characters, but you essentially know who the two people are. And it's so easy to it's not easy, but it's a wonderful, as a writer, it's like a comforting anchor to then build your arcs around that one and sub arcs, and like it's like making a braid, you know, and until you finally get to the end. But that one thread that goes through it is almost like a comfort. You know, if you're going to be a genre writer, I think it's a comfort in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to, if it's okay, I want to shift gears, but we're gonna come back to this in a way. Because I promised we're going to talk about libraries.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
You run a book club for kids. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah. First, I'm just going to point out that I think it's Sunday starts National Library Week. So we celebrate our public libraries, at least in the U.S. here anyway. Monday is the Right to Read Day. So against book banning and stuff. So yeah, I love my library. I grew up going to my public libraries in every single place that I've ever lived. One of the first things I did in every place I've ever moved was go to the library and get a library card. I mean, that tells me I'm home. When I moved here to New Hampshire, I went one step further and I got my library card and I filled out a volunteer form. And the librarian knew that I was a teacher. And so she said, oh, I think they had run a book club in the past and she wanted to revive that. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to. I'm comfortable with elementary because I was an upper elementary teacher. So that's what we started with. And I started with a group of kids, a cohort of kids. I think they were second or third grade, but I stayed with those same kids for years. They've now aged on into middle school. And I just this year started with younger kids. And we read a variety of books. It's because I'm a volunteer, it was kind of like when I have time to fit it in. We certainly slowed things down during the pandemic. We didn't meet in person. They would go online. Now we're back in person. Because I was busy. I basically have just started it back up again. But yeah, I think it was just wanting to serve my community, and I love working with kids. I was helping with the preschool story hour, which was great. I was doing like the crafts. But yeah, so we'll choose a book. I keep it so light. I know you had asked me like, how do you motivate kids? So they're self-selected. I mean, they can come to the light. Whoever wants to come can come. And I'm competing obviously with sports and music and dance and gymnastics and that whole thing. So whoever can come. And you know what? If they read the book, great. But I always make sure that if we talk about the book, that we're talking about the themes. And so if a child hasn't read the book, doesn't matter. They can still participate and give me their opinion. And then I keep it so light. And then we play games and we do crafts. There, I'll show you. We just read The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. And so here's my robot, my little Billy robot. So we do crafts, and we read a wide variety of genres. I mean, The Wild Robot was, I guess, science fiction. We read realistic fiction. We read comedy. What I typically did is every year to end things, they would choose a biography. There's a whole series. I'm trying to think, like, Who Is This? I think is the name of the series. And the library had them. And so every child would go up and choose a person. And then we would come and we'd have a party of come as your person. So that kind of ended the year. So people were reading biography, and yeah, so that's been great. And then in the summer, the librarian again asked me if I would do, at first it was a teen writing, and that actually went middle grade up into high school. I've now pared that down. It's basically upper elementary through middle school. And again, it's very light. That's, what child wants to come and sit for an hour and a half and have a writing class? So no, we do workshops. I do games, we might do poetry, or I incorporate things in the town. Like we went for a little walk through the town and the kids sketched a building in town. And then they came back and wrote about that building. We visited the Historic Society and they had to write, and our Historic Society is like a little 2-room house kind of thing. Kiersten, you would love it. And they did an exhibit on the clothing of the 1800s or something. And so the kids, we looked around at all the clothing and we came back and we said, let's write about, can you imagine, if you were living back then and they had the children's clothing, and you had to wear that, and what life would be like. So I keep it really light. We play a lot of games. And a lot of the writing is in the form of like a craft. Like we might do poetry and they'll draw pictures and then write a poem about it. So it's very light. And yeah, so that's my thing, is just trying to keep it really light, working a lot of arts and crafts and games and things like that. So, but I love it. I mean, being a teacher, I liked, but the thing that I missed about teaching was not working with the children. So I love that aspect of that. And they're so motivating. They're so creative, you know, and I come away every single time just saying, wow, the insights that these kids have, the thoughts that they have, we just, you know, I'm always motivated by them. So yeah. Yeah.
And the rest of us will go nap.
Yeah.
I'm not motivated by kids.
Well, come to one of my writing workshops. I'll have you playing games.
I'd have to fly over. It'd probably take 22 hours.
I know. Well, I became good at Zoom meetings. Just saying.
Oh my God, that would be fun. Oh, we're
I
gonna
know.
talk about that. That would be fun. We need to talk about that.
No,
Yeah.
we do not. Don't give me
Yeah.
that look.
All right, well,
No,
Kiersten,
no. All right, Sid and I are talking. I'm thinking that would be super fun, like a writing community day on Zoom.
yeah, yeah, be like a little mini conference.
Ah,
Yeah, with fun
Yay.
workshops.
oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta make sure that we talked about everything we were gonna talk about, because we're like running out of time even with our
I
break.
know.
Oh my gosh. I did want to ask you, because you are building your website. Do you think you're gonna put any recipes on there?
I know you were asking about that. That's a
Lasagna and
great
how to make it over 3 days.
over 3 days. Yeah, over over 3 pages. Yeah, I probably should. You know, the odd thing is that when I put this food in there, well, first of all, if you read my book, you'll notice that they all drink coffee, like iced coffee, mocha. There's all these coffee references. I do not drink coffee. I'm a tea drinker. Why these people all drink coffee is beyond me. I think because it's a New Hampshire thing. So that's funny. And then a lot of the food, like they go to cookouts. They're in this like little community and they have these cookouts and they're always grilling and they're having like potato salad and all this stuff. And I don't do a lot of cookout food, you know. I think they grill salmon. One of them grills salmon, and yeah, I grill salmon. She makes a big lasagna full of meat. When I make the lasagna, I tend to do vegetarian lasagna. So I think I'm living vicariously through my characters. Brownies and ice cream, like back in the day, but do I eat brownies ice cream as a rule now? No. So yeah, I think I'm vicariously living through that. But I love to cook. I love to bake. And you gave me such a great idea that I think when I start like doing blog posts, I could definitely see putting food in there.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Now, COVID taught me how to cook, so I couldn't do a blog on food.
Yeah. I just like food. Love food. Yeah. So
it sounds like you'll have a good a good amount of like deleted scenes that you can add in there too for your readers if you do. Like
I probably could. Yeah. So yeah, I know my website, I do actually have a domain now. It will be cidkfleming.com. And I have it sort of fleshed out. I'm just still trying to figure out how to attach all the pieces and get it there. I do want the blog functioning first before I launch it, but it should be out, I'm hoping, in the next week or so. Yeah, so I've been kind of working with my Squarespace and
awesome.
try to get it up there. Yeah. So, but yeah, I love that idea. When you said we're going to do recipes, I'm like, oh yes, that sounds a good idea.
Yeah, there's so many fun things that I love it when other authors take from their books and just bring it to life like that. Because writing, I actually don't write like food, like too much food talk in books, but historical, I can't escape it.
Yeah,
because people want to know what they ate. So yeah,
right.
I think you should also have a crafts page.
A crafts page. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, what you created with your kids. Because I mean, that robot is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. No, I think if I became widely published as a kids author, it would go there. I don't know, like if you're reading about the mountains of New Hampshire, maybe I'd find some good related crafts to do.
Because
Related
are
to
you
my
going to
book.
have
Yeah.
two separate websites there?
Well, I mean, right now, I mean, this is it. This will be my website, and I have
Yeah,
just that one.
so you'll have all your kids' books and all your books. So then the craft page would actually work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I finally, if and when I finally get a lot of kids' books, and that might go there too, or it might be separate. I don't know. Let's see. Like right now, I just have that one magazine, but yeah.
That's a
You
start.
want
For
to show us?
now, focus on romance and get this done. I need to get this second book out. I keep telling my editor, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I mean, I just want her to love it, and I mean, I don't have a contract or anything, so I just have to like get it done and before her eyes. And then I do have ideas for 2 more in the series. So I have fallen in love with my town. I love the people, and I would love to just go with it for a little bit more, you know?
That's great. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We are out of time.
Yeah.
So it always goes so fast.
Yep.
So everybody, please look for Cid's book. It's coming out in several weeks from this recording date. So it's April right now. We think June.
So June, I've been told June 19th is what they have me now. Yep, June 19th. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and look for my website in a few weeks.
Yep.
CidFleming.com. And yeah, and believe me, I will blitz it with the publicity.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Well-
so much. It was a wonderful to talk to both of you, and you know, it's really it's such a great community. This Champagne Book Group is a wonderful community of authors and editors. So
Yes, it is.
All
Yeah.
right, everybody, please like this video, subscribe, follow us depending on where you're watching. Check out below, because we will keep an eye on Cid and make sure she gets that website live, and we will put links down below for you. If you have any questions for her or for Sevannah, please also put them in the comments. We will get you answers. Cid, thank you so much.
you're welcome, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Everybody have a great day.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.